we have an unbelievably inspiring speaker coming up, Kevin Reilly. I noticed a couple of things that aren't in Kevin's bio, and I'd like to mention them today. Number one, Kevin is a father of 3. He's the grandfather of 10. He practices the Man Up Philly preaching. He brought his father today. He brought his brother today. And we have Kevin today. There's one other thing I noticed that Kevin didn't put in his bio as you're looking at it, and I haven't verified this yet, but I think that maybe Kevin didn't mention that he was an incredible football hero at Villanova University, because we're at St. Joe's today. But give him a great big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Reilly.
Good morning. As Elizabeth Taylor said to her 8th husband, I won't keep you long. Hey, I got to get grounded. You know I bleed Eagle Green. Been on the radio with him for 16 years following my brief stay there. Do we have any Dallas Cowboys fans in the house? I got to know. Come on, cowboy up. No Cowboy fans, great, I won't have to talk slower. When there's 4 Cowboys in the car, do you know who's driving? It's the sheriff all the time. You know, Jerry Jones has said he's going to clean up that act down there, and so this off season he created a new honor code. It's called Yes, Your Honor, No, Your Honor. Any Giant fans in the house? I know we must have a few of them. All right. God bless you. You're 3 years away from being 2 years away. It's all right. You know, Eustace said I got 10 grandkids, and I got to tell you, the things they say are just incredible. About 6 weeks ago, I get asked by Liam, 5 years old, who's in preschool, Pop, can you come and read a story? It's grandfather's and grandmother's time week to read. I said, absolutely. Teacher calls me up the night before. She said, can you be there at 11? I got the story for you. And oh, by the way, Mr. Reilly, I know you were involved in a program with Special Olympics called Project Unify, in which you taught about differences, being able to not bully, and accepting people that are not like you. Do you think it would work with 5-year-olds? I know the program was for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders. And I said, I don't know. I said, as Coach Vermeil would say, can't hurt and might help. We'll give it a shot. So I get over there, and there's 15 kids sitting on the carpet. I read the story, and I go into a couple bullet points on it's okay to stare as long as you say hello. And at the very end, to get their attention, I said, and now, what do you notice about me that's different from all of you? I said, what do you notice about Liam's grandfather that's different from all of you? This one little girl, she looked smart, so I called on her. I said, yes, Emily. She said, you're old. I had nowhere to go. The two teachers were out in the hallway laughing so hard. Never get on stage with kids or dogs or anything like that. You know, coming down here tonight, I couldn't help but come up I-95, and I couldn't help but think about my buddy, Bill Berge. A couple years ago, you know, we did radio together, and being the Eagles, they wanted to have a weekend where they were really into the know with being natural, you know, green. You see the windmills now. It's all, you know, being natural. They put natural fertilizer down in the grass. So they asked us as employees if we would carpool to work to save gas and to show and be in the spirit. So I never drove with Bill. He always drove himself, and he said he would pick me up. And of course, he was late picking me up. We're on 95. That's jammed because people were going to the game. You can't be late for live radio or live TV. And you know, I'm on the phone with our producer. He said, I don't know what we're going to do. So Bill starts driving on the shoulder of 95, and gosh, we actually get around the stadium. Thank God everybody knows who he is, and the policemen are waving us by. Bill Berge let him go. Well, Bill has also, he's very frugal. He's still got his first Holy Communion money, all right? So I said, if you get to VIP parking and valet this car, we're going to make it. So he pulls up to valet parking and goes right by him. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'll find a parking space. I said, Bill, we circled twice. Now I'm getting mad. I said, just go to the valet. He looks to heaven and he said, dear God, if you help me find a parking space, I promise I won't drink beer from now till Easter. Just then, the WIP van pulled out. He said, never mind, God, I found one myself. Anyway, I come here today and I speak to a lot of corporations. I have spoken to the Philadelphia Eagles team. I've spoken to the Ravens team. Good Catholic man down there by the name of John Harbaugh invited me down. And I've had an opportunity to talk to college students, grade school students, sports banquets, you name it. But this is the audience that I'm most comfortable with because I don't have to be politically correct. I can talk to you from my heart, and the worst thing I'll get from one of the priests here is, four Our Fathers and three Hail Marys, So I tell that to you, and I say this. Some of you out there today, things are going pretty well in your world. Job's good, your health's good, your grandkids are all healthy, your kids are healthy, you're making money. And I want to tell you something, enjoy it, because it won't last long. And a few of you out there had problems so big that you didn't even hear what I was saying until I raised my voice. And I say, hang in there. It won't last long either. I'm going to tell you a little story about overcoming obstacles that has a lot to do with what I call the 4 F's of life: faith, family, friends, and fortitude. And then in that order: faith, family, friends, and fortitude. And I want to tell you my story because this is the essence of those 4 F's. Back in the day, before there were 300 channels on TV and the internet, it wasn't unusual for a kid like me in the late 50s and the early 60s to grab a ball and go out in the backyard and pretend. I feel bad for these kids today that are so attached to this electronic sweatshop that they don't have 20 minutes to go out and play ball. I really feel bad for them. But pretending was just another way of dreaming. And it went into my subconscious. And as I think back, it probably helped me with my broadcasting career, because who doesn't pretend in broadcast while they're shooting that final shot, that Chris Jenkins shot, or, the winning touchdown? And so that logged in the back of my brain, and you don't tell a lot of people about what you're pretending because they'll make fun of you. But I was fortunate enough to be a pretty good athlete. I went to Salesianum High School, an all-boys high school down in Wilmington, Delaware. And then from there, I went to Villanova University. And I started out my career at St. Mary Magdalene. I had 16 years of Catholic education, and I had 3 kids in 41 months. I was out shooting storks after the first one was born. I didn't know how that happened. But while at Villanova, I was really fortunate to play behind 2 guys. And I say fortunate because there are blessings in this world that we take for granted. But 2 guys in front of me, Mike Ciani and John Babinez. Ciani got drafted in the first round by the Oakland Raiders. And John Babinez got drafted in the second round by the Dallas Cowboys. And this was before combines and stuff. And those guys drew scouts. And in drawing the scouts, they happened to see me play, which would not have probably happened if they weren't on my team. So you think about that blessing. And because of that, I got noticed, and I got drafted in the 7th round by the world champion Miami Dolphins. Now, I'm 22 years old. I get down to the Dolphins camp. There's 23 of us that are going to be competing for 2 slots on the team. Now, the 1972 Dolphins, did anybody remember what they did special? They went undefeated. They're the last team ever to go undefeated. So here I am, 23 years old. I'm in a locker room looking at guys and getting dressed with guys that I've been reading about in Sports Illustrated since I was a junior at Salesianum. These guys are my heroes. There's Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, Mercury Morris, Bob Greasy, and the Don himself, Don Shula, who, by the way, very, very dedicated Catholic man, Mass every day. So I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be really difficult. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 slots left on the team. I'm the 7th round draft pick, so that means that the coaches thought there were 6 guys ahead of me already that were better than me. What's the chances of me making this team? Well, If you couple that with the fact that it was 10 arduous weeks of practice in the Miami sun, 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, no water on the field. And if you passed out, it was considered weakness. They didn't know anything about dehydration then, I guess. But, you know, you used to just pace yourself to get through it. And I want to tell you, it was, you know, it was probably pretty consistent with, you know, being in military training. And so after 5 days of getting beat up and, you know, nobody talks to you, you ask the veterans a question, they'll give you the wrong answer. What time's the meeting? 7:15. You show up at 7:15, the meeting started at 7, and you're fined $500. So you know not to ask them because you know what? They don't want you to make the team. You might take a spot of their buddies. The veterans don't even talk to you. They don't look at you. So after 5 days, I was beat up. I was mentally down. And I remember it was the first time I made a phone call back home. And I got on the phone with my dad, and I was telling him how tough it was. And you know what I was really looking for? An excuse to leave. I'm going like, you know, I don't know. This is really, we've got 9 more weeks of this stuff, 7 exhibition games. We played the college all-stars, which added to that, a couple scrimmages. And I'm not doing that well. I'm just about hanging in there. And I'm just looking for that, okay, yeah. Silence. And he says, well, did you think about, you're a big guy now, you're an adult, you do what you want, but did you think about the repercussions that might have with the guys that you went to high school with and the legends of 100 years of Salesianum football? Our motto at Salesianum is Tenui Nectum Mitum. I have taken hold and will not let go, or basically means never ever give up. That was a hard question. And when I left that phone booth that night, I started thinking really deeply, I can't do that. I would have to face that the rest of my life. What was I thinking? So I made a commitment that night that I was going to go out and I was going to give my best shot, day after day after day, until they either cut me or I made the team. And you know, the best way to get noticed if you're in the pile like that, and I did it, is go out and start a fight. And if you're going to start a fight, it's going to get stopped in 40 seconds. So I went after Larry Little, the biggest lineman I could find on the Dolphins. And I got noticed, and you know, after a couple of days, I would start to get these knocks on my door at night. Hey, Riles, it'd be midnight. We got the taxi out here, we're leaving, you want to come? There's my bag here. Nah, I think I'll pass. And all of a sudden I'd think, well, those are 2 more guys I don't have to compete against. But see, they would leave in the middle of the night because nobody would leave in the daytime. It was too embarrassing. And so one thing led to another, and a week before the first game, it's me and Don Strock, the only 2 rookies left on the team. And all of a sudden, the veterans start talking to me. And then they post the special teams, punting, kickoff return, and I'm on every one. And so I'm getting my hopes up. 5 more days, unless something happens with the waiver wire, which can always happen, I think I made this team. Well, not so. Thursday morning, Bill Orensbarger comes in, says, Kevin, get your playbook and get down and see Coach Shula. That's never a good sign. So I go into the coach, and I got to tell you, he couldn't have been more gracious to me. He knew that I'd put in 10 hard weeks, and he said to me, you can play in this league, kid. He said, but we have a need for defensive end, and we're a little over at linebacker, so we're going to take this guy that maybe can be the backup in the 53 slot. Otherwise, you'd have made this team. And he said, I got some good news for you. You were picked up on the waiver wire by the Philadelphia Eagles. So on the way home in the plane, I was terribly disappointed, until I started to think about, you know, if I was picked up on waivers and next 2 days nothing happens, I'm playing Sunday. And so that began my little career with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I started to think, you know, if I didn't pursue the last 10 weeks, I wouldn't have had value. And it was the first time as an adult that I had really stood up and was challenged and met the challenge. First year with the Eagles, I said to a reporter, I said, the guy that I'm going after to beat out is number 66, Bill Berge. Well, that didn't happen. And I decided that the way I'm going to be valuable to this team is to be a special teamer. And so I studied the rules on special teams, something that half the guys in the NFL don't know. They don't know when to touch the ball, when to kick it. they don't know, because they're, except at New England, they know everything. They're tested once a week. So in 1974, I was captain of the special teams, and you know we weren't very good in the early 70s. The Eagles were not very good. And we hadn't been on Monday Night Football in 5 years, and we had been beaten by the Dallas Cowboys 9 straight times, twice a year for 4 years, and once going into the 4 years. I think the Cowboys used to get the schedule out and go, Eagles, W, Eagles, W. And they were coming to town, and they were going to play us on Monday Night Football in October of 1979. I'm sorry, 1974. And I can remember being in the locker room excited. I was half dressed and taped up. I was still taping my wrist and stuff. And Dick LeBeau, our special teams coach, comes in and says, Kev, get the kickoff team and get into our meeting room. What? This doesn't happen. So I get the other 10 guys, the kickoff team. We get in the room. We're talking about it. I hope nothing happened to somebody's parent or anything. And in comes Dick. Dick played 14 years in the NFL, was all pro about 12 of those 14 years, and he was a player's coach. We loved this guy. We'd go through walls for him. And he closes the door with his foot, and I remember a big smile coming over his face. He said, guys, this is your lucky day. He said, the coaching staff has decided in order to get the 12th man, the crowd, into this game, they're going to introduce the special teams because you guys resonate with the 700 level. They're blue-collar workers, and you're the blue-collar workers in the NFL. And if we can get them cheering up there, it'll cascade down. And that's what they wanted to do. The 700 level. They let them out on furlough on the weekend so they can go to the games. So here I am. I'm in the tunnel. And I go back to being 12 years old. Is my name on the back of this jersey? Are you kidding me? This is what I was pretending about. Holy mackerel. I'm getting ready to get introduced as the captain of the special teams in front of 70,000 fans and a couple million people on TV. Well, by the time they introduced our third guy, it was so loud. What the heck, they've been drinking since noon. It was so loud that Bobby Picard, who was standing in front of me, turned around and he was screaming something at me. I couldn't hear a word he was saying, but I could feel the spit coming at me on my face mask. By the time they got to my announcement, you know the guy, you're in Philly here, I'm not in the foreign country, Dan Baker, he's still the voice of the Phillies broadcast out in the field. He did that for the Eagles, and it was his second, third year. And, you know, being a Philly guy has a lot of, and being a local guy has a lot of clout when it comes to buddy system. And so he introduced me this way, just a little extra mustard on my introduction. And now from Villanova University and Wilmington, Delaware, number 52 in our program, captain of the special teams, Kevin Reilly. I don't even remember my feet touching the AstroTurf. I floated across the 10 guys that were setting personal high jump records at the 50-yard line. It was unbelievable. The crowd was on fire. We almost lost all of our energy in the pregame activity. Well, to make a long story short, with 3 seconds to go, Tom Dempsey is going to try to attempt a 48-yard field goal, and if he makes it, we win by 2. Tom Landry called not 1 but 2 timeouts to try to ice Tom Dempsey, something you can't do. This guy was 6'4", he weighed 283 pounds, and he was bad. And he grabbed every guy in that huddle during those timeouts by the face mask and said, you make the block, I'll make the kick. You make the block, I'll make the kick. And I can remember like it was yesterday. I had to get the guy on the inside, and I had to get that wing guy. I got to just get a piece of that guy so he doesn't come clean. And I did that, and I rolled after this speedy wide receiver. And I'm on the ground, and I look up, and it goes through the uprights. Oh, we beat the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night TV. It doesn't get any better than this. I'm 6'2", 235 pounds. I'm 235 pounds. I got a 400-pound bench press. I run a 4.7 40. I'm 25 years old. I'm single. It doesn't get any better than this. Well, that was my 15 minutes of fame. And as my kids would say, not. Because what I'll do now is take you, and you understand while I told you that story. I just didn't fall from way up here to way down here. 5 years later, to the exact month, October 1979, I wake up in Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York City, minus my left arm, my left shoulder, and 4 ribs. This is a prosthetic device made of Kevlar. You guys know what Kevlar is? Bulletproof. If I'm ever in a fight in a Chester bar, I'm leading with this shoulder. Can you imagine if I got stabbed and got up and went, hey, is that your best shot? But I digress because this fourth day when I had all the tubes out of me and all the monitors off me and I was lucid, I started to think about the future. And I looked up and there was the pictures of my 2-year-old, my 1-year-old, and my infant, and I had to turn them down. Because as a dad, every time I looked at him, I started to tear up. How was I going to make a living for him? How are things going to go? I don't know. The doctor comes in. Oh, I'm so glad to see him. Doc, how did things go? It went pretty well, except he said you were under the knife for 11 and a half hours. But I think we got it all. You what? You think you got it all? Where are you going next? You know? You got cadaver parts I'm not aware of? Look, settle down, will you? And I wasn't settling down. That was not the words I wanted to hear. My anxiety level went up like that. And he says, look, just settle down. Let me try to humor you a little bit. It's an 11 and a half hour operation. I would have liked to spend a little more time around your neck area with the frozen cultures, but, you know, you were starting to lose blood pressure and all that. And by the way, you were totally, infused with new blood. You have 22 units of new blood in you. And that's good news. I said, how's that? He said, well, 11 of these units came from guys you played ball with at Salesiana and Villanova and the Eagles. And I said, well, that is good news. And I said, what's bad news after that? He said, well, the other 11 units came from the streets of New York. I said, and you got good news after that? He said, yeah. He looked around, he said, in 6 weeks, you might be able to speak Spanish, you might like black eyed peas, and you guys are an Irish broad. Well, when he left, I really started to spiral down because I didn't want to hear those words. It was echoing in my mind. And I told the head nurse, I said, I don't want any visitors today. I don't want any phone calls. You see, I was going to have a major league pity party. I had to get my head wrapped around this new situation I was in. See, I just didn't fall from average Joe. I fell from being an NFL athlete, proud of my body, strong, able to do, leap tall buildings in a single leap. And now I'm laying in a hospital bed missing most of the left side of my upper body. And I don't know what my limitations are. I had to get my head self-wrapped around. And so about an hour into my pity party, a guy appears at my doorway, knocks on the side of the door, and I could see he had a smock on, he had credentials. I don't know who he is. He doesn't look like a doctor, but he looks official. And before I could say, come in, he walked in, and as he got closer to me, I could see that we had something in common. His name was Frank. He was in his 60s, and he was missing his left arm as a result of World War II. And Frank was there to counsel me on all the things I would now face as a handicapped person. And that word hit me in the middle of the forehead like a 230-pound fullback on an isolation block. I was not ready for that label. I was just playing in the NFL a couple years ago. Now I'm handicapped. And he brought me this knife that had a very thick blade, and he showed me how I could use it, and had me practice with it, and he said, make sure you take that when you go out to dinner. And I said, why? He said, well, you don't want to be embarrassed by having somebody else cut your meat while you're at dinner. Oh gosh, I didn't think about that. And then he brought me this prosthetic device, and I thought it was just a pillow of some sort. The women's auxiliary had made it. It was very soft, had a strap on it. I didn't know what it was, and he said, you're going to use this when you leave the hospital. I said, why do I need that? I thought I was going to get fitted for a permanent one in about 2 months. Oh, he said, you're going to need this temporary one. I said, why? He said, Kev, when you leave the hospital, you don't want to have your sleeve hanging down at your ankle. You want to leave here with some sort of dignity. Holy mackerel. 5 years ago, I'm tackling, thick-legged fullbacks and halfbacks in the NFL, and now I'm worrying about my dignity walking out of a New York hospital. And so he could see I was spiraling down, and he said, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I work for the Xerox Corporation. He said, what do you do for them? I said, I'm a sales rep. What do you have to wear to work each day? I said, a shirt and tie, suit, and tie shoes, dress tie shoes. Oh, he says like these, and he puts his shoe up on my bed, and it's a pair of wingtip tie shoes. I said, yeah, just like those. I got a pair like that in my closet. Matter of fact, I've had them since 8th grade. I only wear them special occasions. And he said, not like this pair you don't. I said, Frank, it's the same, I don't know, it might not be the same size, but they're black and it's just the same style, everything. He said, no, they're not. He said, give me your hand. He takes my hand and he says, hold on to this flap. And I held on to the flap and he said, pull up. And when I pulled up, it was one of those Velcro flaps. And the Velcro flap came up and they were pre-tied shoes. And I said, what is this? He said, if you're going to wear tie shoes, you're going to have to get these pre-tied because you'll never be able to tie your shoes again. It can't be done. I've been trying for over 30 years. And then he said to me, pull on my tie. And when I pulled, I was literally late and asked me to pull on his finger. When I pulled on his tie, it was one of those clip-on ties that I remember wearing to school when I was a young boy. You know, my mother was I was the oldest of 6 kids. My mother didn't have time to tie my tie. And I said, why do I need clip-on ties? He said, you'll never be able to tie your tie again.
Mike's off.
You'll never be able to tie your tie again, and so you're going to need these clip-on ties. You go down and use my name, and they'll give you a discount, blah, blah, blah. So when he left that day, boy, I started to go through how many things I couldn't do. I had a stick-shift Subaru sitting in the driveway. And then I started thinking buttons and zippers and keyboards, oh my. And with that, as I'm really going downhill again, and this is how God works, the nurse came in and said, you got a telephone call and I want you to take it. I said, no. Well, I told you, I didn't want any visitors. This guy just came in and depressed the hell out of me. I said, I don't need to talk to anybody right now. I'm not there yet. She said, no, you want to talk to this guy. When I heard his name, I knew I wanted to talk to him. His name was Rocky Blyer. For those of you who don't know Rocky Blyer, I'll give you a real brief. He left the University of Notre Dame as a running back in 1971. He was drafted in the 13th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was also drafted by Uncle Sam in the war we had called the Vietnam War. And being the good American boy that he was, he went over to do his duty in Vietnam before trying out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And while there, he received shrapnel in an ambush to his right leg that really damaged his knee badly. They wanted to fuse his leg at the knee, and he would not allow them to do that. He told them to clean it out as best they could, and they did that. And the colonel, who was a doctor, questioned him afterwards, why wouldn't you let us do our job? And he said, because I have a job waiting for me back in the States. The doc said, doing what? He said, well, hopefully playing halfback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the doctor openly laughed at him and said, hey, Rock, you need a reality check. Not only will you never play another down of football anywhere, but you'll be lucky if you ever walk again without a limp. And when that pain gets bad enough, you'll go and get your leg fused just like you should have while you were here. Well, Rock said that kind of messed him up a little bit. He said on the way home on the plane, he wondered maybe he was a little out of character, thinking that he could do that. But there was a guy named Art Rooney. And as the thing goes, a Notre Dame grad, good Catholic man, one of the best men ever to own a NFL franchise because he cared about his players. He cared about his coaches. And he cared so much about Rocky Blyer, who also happened to be Notre Dame, you know, the connection works, that he said, Rock, I'm going to have you examined by 2 of the best orthopedic surgeons in the country, and they're going to see if they can get you back on the field. And these 2 orthopedic surgeons came in and said, you know, if we can make a project out of him and use him as kind of a guinea pig, with 2 more operations and 18 months of rehab, maybe 20 months, we think we might be able to get him back on the field. So Mr. Rooney brought Rock in, said, I'll put you on the payroll for 2 years if you promise me you'll work hard enough to try to get there. Rocky said, you got my word. And he said, well, let's give it a shot, and if you make the team, that'd be great, and if you don't, we can all go home and say we tried our best. Well, not only did Rocky Blyer make the team, he's got 4 Super Bowl rings today. He was the 2nd leading ground gainer behind Franco Harris. And if you don't think God works in mysterious ways, we didn't know each other that well. We had met each other, but was just, you know, the common NFL greeting, hello, how are you, boo boo. You went to Nova. I used to say, I went to the Notre Dame of the East. You went to the Villanova of the Midwest. And, you know, he didn't like that too much. But here he was because LeBeau had told him about me, and here he was reaching out. Another human being reaching out. And we had a nice talk, and I won't bore it with you. But at the very end of it, he said, by the way, Kev, have any of the doctors, rehab people, or nurses been in to tell you about your limitations? I said, no, Rock, but you know, a very well-meaning volunteer came in today, and he depressed the hell out of me. And I told him the story, and he listened so well, it was incredible. And then, with an attitude and a passion I'll never be able to duplicate in front of a crowd, he said to me, Kev, you must promise me something. I said, oh, Rock, yeah, what do you want me to promise you? You must promise me you won't quit on anything unless you try it several times. I said, Rock, listen, this guy that was in here today, I think he's a little more of an expert in the losing arm business than you or I. Rocky hesitated for 5 seconds, and he said, Kev, let me tell you something about experts. Experts built the Titanic, and amateurs built the Ark. Experts can be wrong. So, he badgered me to commit me to saying that I would follow that line. And then he said to me, now that I've committed you to doing that, you're going to fail hundreds and thousands of times, and your biggest problem is going to be patience. You see, you're going to be like me, and you're going to want to rush things, and you're not going to be patient. So instead of stepping back and counting to 10 before you retry that project again, took me 35 times to learn how to do this. He said, I want you to commit to memory this little poem that helped me, and I think it'll help you. And it goes like this. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For in this world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can win the prize. Remember, life's battles don't always go to the biggest, fastest, or strongest man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. And so I followed that advice. And after 37 years, there are 3 things I cannot do. I cannot play the guitar, I cannot pick crabs, and I cannot give the #1 sign left-handed to angry motorists on the Schuylkill Expressway. But contrary to what Ralph told me, I've run in 5 half marathons and a Marine Corps marathon, and I've broke 90 in golf on 2 occasions, something I never did with 1 arm, or 2 arms. And I don't tell you that to say, look what I've accomplished. That's not it. Here's the lesson learned here by me. Here is the lesson learned. The human spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it. And because I'm with Catholic men today, I'll tell you the real significance of that and the real saying. The Holy Spirit is stronger than anything that can happen to it. I want to tell you something. You've been there, some of you, big crisis, where you know somebody's a big crisis and they say, I never thought I'd get through it. I can't believe that I got through that. And why do we wait until there's a crisis in our life to find out how far we can dig down into the human spirit, into the Holy Spirit, and ask God to help us? We don't have to wait for that. You can do it in your everyday lives. It's there. He gave us that gift. But we only seem to grab it when we really have to, when we're pressed. I would also say that one of the things when I see guys like this today, I'm reminded, and I'm so happy to see everybody here. This is my 5th men's conference. I've been to Oklahoma, Tennessee, Boston, and Washington, and this is the most people at any one that I've seen. But I want to tell you something. There is Catholic as you are in Norman, Oklahoma. I didn't think there was 1,500 guys in North Oklahoma that were Catholic. And this is just something very special, which leads me to this. You know, I read or was listening to a gospel a few months ago where Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. And I don't know if you guys follow Villanova basketball, but if you see this little priest, Rob Hagan, sitting down at the end, well, he gives Mass before every football game, and the guy's an incredible speaker. And I stole this from him, okay, so I'll admit that. But he said, you know what that means? I am the vine, you are the branches. He said, you know what the expectations are of that? And with that, he pulls out in front of all these college kids who usually don't get the gospel because it's about Jerusalem and, 10 AD or BC. He says, you see this little thing here, this gadget? It's the most incredible gadget the world has ever known. You can call people on it. You can voicemail on it. You can go GPS on it. You can count your steps on it. You can find out where to go to dinner on it. It's incredible. It's the most, what will we do without it? And he said, it's great unless it's not plugged in. He said, it's a paperweight if it's not plugged in. And so he said, do you think what Jesus is saying to us, I am the vine, you are the branches? He's saying, hey, I gave you obstacles. That was part of the deal. Everybody in here's got a cross to carry. Some bigger than others, but everybody's got a cross to carry. And I did that to you. And I'm going to see how you get through it. But please stay plugged into me. That's all I ask. Just keep staying plugged in, and I'll get you through the next crisis, and then I'll bring you to heaven. Stay plugged in. And you don't have to be with me all the time, but try to continue to come back. And this effort here today tells me you're trying to get plugged in. And hopefully our battery will be charged 100% when we leave. And another little story that I found out when I was in South Dakota, I'm talking to a guy that had lived there for a while, and I'm interested. I'm out there with the Villanova football team. They played South Dakota State in December. And he was talking about, I said, boy, I saw a lot of cattle out here. He says, oh, yeah, you know the story on the cattle out here? I said, what story? He said, well, 100 years ago, they were trying to raise cattle out here, and they'd have a bad winter where it would get to be 10 below zero, and this wind would be blowing 40 miles an hour with, snow and ice. And he said it would drive these cows and steers across the field into a fence, and then they would become a snowdrift, and they would die. And he said on bad winter, they would lose half their population of steers and cows until they found out about this special breed called the Herefords. And he said, see, the Herefords have a natural instinct that when a storm comes up like that, where it's blowing at 40 miles an hour and it's sleeting sideways, they get shoulder to shoulder, and they make a group. And he said, instinctively, the ones on the outside will go and trade places with the ones in the middle to keep the warmth going. And that's what I look at today and say, this is a shoulder-to-shoulder meeting. This is what we need to see guys of similar faith, similar moral compasses getting together to say, hey, well, all the things that are going on in this world, we got to stick by this moral compass that's called our Catholic faith. We have to stick by it. We have to man up. And I'm just going to talk about one more thing, and that is setting an example. All right? Setting an example. We may be the only Bible that our friends and neighbors ever read. Did you think about that? You're a Catholic man, they'll call you out on it. Hey, yeah, he's a Catholic, goes to church every Sunday. I got recruited down south when I was with Villanova, so naive. I get recruited, I get to Kentucky, and a guy said, where'd you go to school? And I said, well, I went Salesianum. Salesianum, what? I said, Salesianum, it's an all-boys Catholic high school. He said, are you a macro snapper? That's a fish eater. I had no idea. I was being discriminated against and didn't get it. But I use that because we have to stand up. Our church has been under fire for 2,000 years. And our God continues to pull us through the burning flames. But we've got to... But we've got to continue. We're holding the mantle right now. We've got the baton. We've got to stand up in this era of complacency. Sex all over the place. Guys, dishonesty everywhere. We've got to hold true to our moral compass. We got to take a stand. How about at the next cocktail party when you hear somebody talking about women's right to abortion? Instead of staying silent, why don't you just say, I disagree with your stand? And they want to get into an argument. I tell you right now, they want to get you into an argument. I'll give you two things. First thing to say is the only thing, here's what I use. I'm just a dumb old jock. All I know is that abortion stops a beating heart. That's all I need to know. I'm dumb. And if it stops a beating heart, that's an alive person. And I don't say another word, because my grandfather used to say, never wrestle with a pig. You'll get dirty and the pig will like it. But we need to take stands like that. Not demonstrative stands, not pounding, not on Facebook, not taking anybody down. I'm an old macho guy, but I've learned over the years that St. Francis de Sales saying, there is no such thing, real strength is really real gentleness, and real gentleness is the true strength. We don't have to be macho. We just have to take a stand to let them know they're not going to run rough road over us, and that we've been here for 2,000 years, and we're going to be here another 2,000 years. So, I got to tell you, you wouldn't be here unless you had an example, right? Was it your father? Was it your uncle? Was it a coach? Well, I'll tell you whose mine was, and he's sitting here today. He's 91 years old. He was in the Navy, owned his own business, raised 6 kids, and he's at daily mass every day. I'd like him to stand up right now. Fran Reilly. He's my hero. And he's passed the baton on to me, and I've got 3 kids and 10 grandkids, and now I've got to set the example like all of you. And that's what I'm challenging you today to do. In this Lenten season, and before I get to that, I'll tell you one funny liquor store story. He owned a liquor store, and it was 2 miles over the Pennsylvania line. And a lot of people came from Pennsylvania to buy liquor, including the priest at Villanova. And one night, while I'm working with him, we weren't very busy, and he gets a call. I get a call. I pick up the phone. It's Father O'Brien. He says, "Is your dad there?" I put my dad on. He says, "Is this a good night to come down and make a liquor run?" See, he would take orders from all the priests in the house. They would come down. They got a great discount, too, by the way. And so my dad said, "Father, yeah, come on down." He said, "Give me your order over the phone. We'll have a package and ready for you to take back." So we got to work doing it. Father shows up in one of the nondescript Impalas, with no hubcaps, just real nondescript. And we put about 6 cases in the back and 2 cases in the back seat. And my dad had a blanket he put over it. And when Father left going north on 202, he looked like a lowrider, So we closed the store. It's 10:30 at night. Remember when the phone would ring and somebody would say, "I'll get it"? That doesn't happen anymore. But the phone rang at 10:30. I thought it was for me. I picked it up as Father O'Brien. He says, "Is your dad there?" I said, "Sure." And he gets on the phone and he tells my dad, he said, "I'm approaching the Pennsylvania state line. There's all kind of police activity." And he goes, "Really?" And he said, "So I pulled on the shoulder of the road. I thought maybe there was an accident and maybe somebody needed, the last rites." So he said, "I pulled up and these 2 state cops come over and they're banging on my car with their nightsticks." And I rolled my window down. I said, officer, take it easy. I'm a Catholic priest. Can I be of service?" And the cop said, "No, Father, go ahead. We're just checking for liquor." So getting back on track. When I was in my hospital room on the day of my operation, and I'll share this with you, it was cold, it was October, it was raining, it was dark, and I remember I didn't turn on a light in the room. And I was sitting there and I was shivering, and I'm not sure if I was shivering because I was cold or I was scared or both, probably both. And about 20 minutes into this, sitting there thinking about what was going to happen and being by myself, pretty lonely thing, and all of a sudden, a shadow in the doorway, and it's Father Keegan. And he said, Kevin, would you like to have communion? I said, sure, Father. And he came in and he gave me communion. And you know, there's an old oblate saying, when God enters a room, fear leaves immediately. 50% of my anxiety went away. 10 minutes later, the nurse came in and gave me a shot in the rear end. The other 50% disappeared. But down there, right before when we're getting ready to go into the opera room, I don't know, there was, I don't remember because I was high, but there were 6 or maybe 8 gurneys. And boy, you can really make quick friends when you have the same similar problems. I didn't know any of these people, and in 10 minutes, we were fast friends. And we're all talking about what's wrong, blip, 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 blip. And so the one lady's getting ready to go in. She's the first one to go into the operating room, and she was to my right. And she said, hey, why don't we all hold hands and say a prayer? And I said, okay, so we all held hands. She said, how about the Lord's Prayer? And the guy down at the end said, I'm Jewish, but right now I'm up for anything. So I was one of the last ones to get wheeled in, and before I got wheeled in, I see this Father Keegan coming at me. And I'm like, what's he must be going to talk, there's nobody else here. And he gets to my gurney and he said, Kevin, I said, Father, you got Alzheimer's? You already gave me communion. He said, well, no, I'm here to give you the sacrament of the sick. I said, yo, I'm an old altar boy. That's called the last rites. And he could see the blood go right out of my face. And he said, Dr. Markov has been here, hasn't he? I said, as a matter of fact, here comes a good doc right now behind you. Doc comes up, he's got a piece of paper, says, here, sign this. He had no bedside manner, but he was a genius. The guy saved my life. Here, sign this. I said, what is it? He said, just sign it. I was supposed to give it to you yesterday. I said, I think I'll read it. It had 2 paragraphs. But I only remember one sentence, and the sentence was, as the adult in this operation, you understand and realize that there's a 33% chance you will not survive the event. Well, as Johnny Carson would say, I did not know that. I said the act of contrition backwards and forwards, and from the 12 credits of French that I took at Villanova, I tried to say it in French, couldn't. But you make a deal. I mean, everything changed. The fog cleared. There was only one thing that was important to me. What was my relationship with my Creator? 29 years old. Got 3 kids at home, but this could be it. 1 in 3 chance. What is my relationship with my Creator? Nothing mattered. Not my NFL experience, not my house. I love my children and my family, but right now, was I ready to meet my God? And so, being Irish, being a salesperson, I looked at God and I made a deal. I said, God, if you pull me through this, I'll even go to St. Joe's and talk to the men there on some Saturday. But really, wouldn't it be funny? And in deference and defense of all the priests in here and every theologians, wouldn't it be funny that when we get to the final judgment day, and boy, I gave this some thought, especially after I came out of that operating room, wouldn't it be funny that you got before your God, you got before Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and God the Father, and they said, here's the deal. It wasn't supposed to be all that complicated. I'm going to count the number of times you got knocked down, and I'm going to count the number of times you got back up. And if you got up one more time and you got knocked down and you had the Catholic faith, which is the true faith, that's all I asked. And how about if you bring a dozen other people off the mat of life as you come up? Will there be an all-merciful God that will keep you out of the gates of heaven? I don't think so. And so I challenge you as I leave this stage here today, it's Lent. I ask you to do 3 things. I challenge you. During Lent, once a week, find out what time early local Mass is and go once a week to early local Mass and get plugged in. See if your day isn't better. And you'll find out you may go 2 days, you may go 3 days. It's a nice way to start your day in peace and quiet and organize your thoughts before we run into this world. That's number 1. Try daily Mass once a week during Lent. The second thing is, I want you to mend a fence. Somebody that you haven't talked to in years, whether it be a family member or a friend, during this period, I want you to see if you're man enough to reach out, and even if you were the one wronged, to say, hey, I'd like to make peace. And even if you have to make an apology, do it. And let me know later, someday when you run into me, how that feels. I guarantee you're going to feel better. And last but not least, and it's already been set up here, we have to take care of those people that are underprivileged, that are struggling in this world. And we're going to be held accountable for all the skill sets and assets that we have before our God if we're not doing that. And once a day, could you do something kind to somebody? Write a note. Cheer up somebody that's doing a menial job. Those three things: daily mass, once a week, mend a fence. The bigger the hole, the better you'll feel. And take care of the underprivileged. And so I'll leave you with that, and I'll also say this. And I'm so proud to be here, and I'm so proud to be a Catholic man among you. And I'm not speaking to you, I'm with you. There may be no such thing as magic, but there are miracles. And thanks to the men in this room, they happen right here in Philadelphia every day. Thank you very much for having me.
Kevin Reilly. Unbelievable.